Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 9 transfer plans where I'll go through my initial thoughts around my team, some possible transfers and look ahead to future game weeks as well. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, as always, before we look at the upcoming week, we have to review the game week that has just gone. And I guess it hasn't ended because there is a game on Monday night, but I don't have any players in that game. And I have finished on 24 points. And normally what I say when I've scored 24 points is it's just one of those weeks. These weeks happen in FPL. I feel like I say that every week. So either this is just an absolutely stinking season. If you agree with that, firstly, drop a like, but also let me know down below if you agree. Or I'm just absolutely terrible at this game and I just get really bad scores every week. Because it just feels like every week I seem to rock up and just say, oh, it was one of those weeks. Just seems to be quite low scoring. Lots of disappointing performances. But I guess we are off the back of, I think, 3 or 4 green arrows in a row. And you can't have a perfect week every single game week. But genuinely, every single player blanked apart from Rodgers, who got a goal, but he got booked and had no bonus points. That's it for my team. Lots of 1-pointers in there, couple of 2s. So let's go through it very briefly because I don't want to talk about it in too much detail. Raya and Gabriel obviously lost their clean sheet. That was gutting due to the Saliba red card. You just can't control these things in FPL. If Saliba hadn't been sent off, yeah, they might have conceded anyway. I just got a bit of a vibe as I was watching the starting moments of that game, though. I kind of felt like a clean sheet was there. So that's obviously very frustrating. They conceded twice, so 1 point each. And they're now about to go into a very tricky fixture run against Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea. So that is not looking ideal now, that double up, considering they won't even have Saliba for those games. Saka obviously didn't turn up. He wasn't with the squad. Some people suggesting that some people had leaks. I obviously had no information. Otherwise, I would have removed Saka. So I actually wasn't too displeased when I saw he wasn't in the squad because I was like, do you know what? I actually quite wanted to play Cunha, who was first sub. So I was like, it's not the end of the world. Unfortunately, obviously, not only did Cunha blank, so I didn't really get much auto sub jam. But on top of that, the 2 other players that I would have gone for, either Heung-min Son or Foden, both returned. Obviously, Foden didn't start. So he would have only got me, I think, 4 points is what he ended on. Son comes away with, it's looking like it's going to be 12 points with, I'm not going to say a jammy assist. Let me know down below if you've seen the Son assist, what you think of it. But that's obviously a big loss there. If I'd have gone for Saka to Son, which was one of the possibilities on the deadline stream, I would be 10 points up, for example. But I didn't make that move. I decided to keep Saka because I thought he might play. Cunha comes on for the auto sub. Outside of that, I mean, Leif Davis, we're going to discuss Leif Davis in a second because people keep telling me he's an awful pick. And to be honest, he's got me 1 point in 2 weeks. So it's difficult to argue with you. But no defenders are really getting points at the moment. I mean, Lewis gets a 2-pointer. He's my top scoring defender. Dibbling with the 1-pointer. There was actually goals in that game, as I thought there would be. I thought Southampton-Leicester would be a high-scoring game. Southampton scored a couple of goals. Dibbling was involved in the celebrations only, I think. Got absolutely no real chances in that game, and it shows why he is probably 4.6 million. Brian Mbeumo, 0.08 XGI in that game against United. I thought United were actually pretty decent, and Mbeumo didn't really get many chances. Cole Palmer had a couple of chances. I mean, the game has just ended. I watched the Liverpool game. He had a couple of chances in there, but no returns for him. Rodgers actually is probably my best performing player, not just in terms of the goal, but he actually had a few chances himself. Solanke, we're going to discuss Solanke moving forward because it was another really bad performance from an FPL perspective. He was dropping very deep. He only had 1 shot, very few actual chances, if any real clear-cut chances. And for his price, he needs to be doing more, especially when someone like Jackson continues to return, even with trickier fixtures. You just wonder, like, why am I paying what I am for Solanke? Like, a lot of the cheaper forwards continue to return. The likes of Raul Jimenez, Welbeck got another goal this week. So I'm not particularly happy with Solanke, and he needs to do a lot more for me. And then Erling Haaland, I mean, I've broken him. I've broken Erling Haaland. Only I could do that. I mean, he did blank 1 game before I brought him in, but that's now back-to-back blanks. And it's just so frustrating on so many levels. Firstly, I obviously sold Salah and basically wildcarded to get Haaland into my team. So that's the first frustrating thing, is that I've lost Salah and I've brought in Haaland. And all in all, it's obviously been a disaster because I've captained Haaland 2 weeks in a row. Last week, if I didn't have Haaland, I would have captained Saka, absolutely. So I would have got that double 16 points. So was that last week? It's been going for a while now, FPL, hasn't it? And then this week, I probably would have captained Salah if I still had him, believe it or not, against Chelsea, because it's a fixture that I thought he could do well in. So that is back-to-back captaincy blanks, and the alternatives that I would have probably gone for instead absolutely smashed it. If I didn't captain Salah, I probably would have brought in Son and captained him. So that is frustrating in and of itself that I've lost all of those points. But it's also frustrating because all this does is reinforce that going without Haaland in Game Week 1 was a seriously viable strategy. Because I know people point to the fact, yeah, he had Ipswich in Game Week 2 though, and he always starts the season well. And you can come up with all these narratives if you want to. But my point was, going without Haaland is viable because unless he scores 2 to 3 goals every week, you can really use that money elsewhere. Sadly for me, in the first 4 weeks, he did score 2 to 3 goals every single week. And so, yeah, so for so many reasons, it's super frustrating that now Haaland decides that he doesn't want to score any goals. He's obviously got Southampton next week, so I'm not removing him before Southampton at home. But if he has another poor week or he fails to impress, even if he does pretty well, I am looking at from Game Week 10 onwards, maybe going back to my Salah draft, simply because Salah continues to do quite well. He's got some decent fixtures coming up. But also, I could do with that extra, 2.7, 2.8 million that you get by having Salah instead of Haaland. I mean, even my bench didn't get me many points this week. Cunha, Vandenberg, and Nuri all blanked too. So, yes, it was one of those weeks, but I need to stop having those weeks, in all honesty. I could kind of do with some big scores. I'm now back down to 2.7, 2.8 million, and I don't have any players on Monday. I could end around 3 million, and I just don't know what to say about this season. The one saving grace is, as I said previously, if I point back to last season, going into Game Week 8 last season, I was 3.2 million. I did have a very good Game Week 8 and 9, so I'm hoping that Game Week 9 might be the turning point for me. And so I'm not too stressed at the fact that I look at my rank now and it is a much higher number than I would want. But it does just feel like, I'm not getting to grips with it quite right at the moment, FPL, because we'll discuss in a second as well. I like the look of my team. There aren't many players that I desperately want to own instead, but I'm just finding it difficult to predict what's happening in FPL at the moment. So there we go. That was Game Week 8. I got 24 points. I would love to know how many points you got for Game Week 8. Did anyone manage to get worse than 24? Or potentially if you beat it, feel free to gloat down below. But yeah, let's now move on to Game Week 9 and hopefully forget Game Week 8 for the rest of my life. So this is the point of the FPL cycle where we try our best to just breathe, relax, and not make any rage transfers on a Sunday evening. And I highly recommend you also don't make any rage transfers on a Sunday evening because we tend to not make the best transfers in the aftermath of what has just happened, especially when we've not had the best week. And I'm saying you might have had a cracking week, by the way, but I'm going to assume that a lot of people watching this might have not had the best week. And so we need to try and go through our teams objectively and just think, are there players that are genuinely issues? And there definitely will be genuine issues and things that have happened, but also not overreact too much and just rush players out because they've had 1 or 2 bad weeks. A lot of the time, patience is rewarded in FPL. So it is about finding that balance. And I also feel like I need to try and find that balance with my team at the moment, given that I've just wildcarded in Game Week 7. So in an ideal world, I've got 3 free transfers right now. I should really still be rolling because probably not much has changed since I wildcarded that I desperately need to do with my team. There are a few things, but in an ideal world, yeah, I would still be rolling. And I keep going back to that Game Week 12 fixture swing that we've been talking about. I would love to go into Game Week 12 with 4 or 5 free transfers. And so if I can try and get there as quickly as possible and then just use my transfers, sorting my team out in the run-up to that, that would probably be the ideal situation. But I also don't want to get overly complacent with my team and just sit back and not do anything just because I can keep rolling. Just because you can roll your transfer doesn't necessarily mean you should. And I'm sat here with 3 free transfers. I could technically use one and still be sat there with 3 free transfers next week. So I'm not in a bad position, and therefore I don't want to get into a spot with my team where I'm like scared to make a transfer and I just keep them because, yeah, I'm okay with the team. So it's about finding that balance for me at the moment. If I am absolutely clutching at straws and trying to find every positive possible, at least my team value is going up nicely at the moment. And people are looking to bring in some of the players that I own. I actually spoke to Praz earlier in the season for FPL Therapy. And he said, and by the way, I really need FPL Therapy this week. And he said that one of the things he looks to is to, if his team is well set up, are other people bringing in the players that you already own? And I look at some of the players that I do already own, such as Palmer, Nuri, Cunha, just to name 3 of them, and they probably are the main 3. People are looking at bringing these players in soon. So I do feel like the team isn't terribly set up. So just to briefly go through all of the players and whether there is a chance of them leaving my team in Game Week 9. Double Arsenal defence does feel like a slight issue now, and it's not because of the tricky fixtures, because I knew what I was doing in Game Week 7. When I picked Double Arsenal defence, I was actually happy to play them through these 3 fixtures because we know that Arsenal are better in the trickier games. The issue is now that Saliba red card. He's suspended for 3 games. I think because they have that EFL Cup game in between, I think he only misses Liverpool and Newcastle in the Premier League. I might be wrong on that. Feel free to correct me down below. But I think he only misses Liverpool and Newcastle, which means he's back for Chelsea and beyond. So it's only 2 games. And in all honesty, I probably wasn't expecting a clean sheet against Liverpool anyway. But it feels even worse now starting double Liverpool defence in those fixtures, knowing that they are without arguably their best player, let alone their best defender. And I think Saliba is more important than people realise to that defence. I know Arteta sets them up in a great way. And in all honesty, they defended quite well against Bournemouth when they went down to 10 men. But I just think against Liverpool and Newcastle, I'm not expecting a clean sheet now. And then Chelsea have been attacking fairly well too. We know they've been much better in the Premier League this season. So the next three now, I'm wondering, is there even a clean sheet there? And I mean, they weren't able to keep clean sheets against Leicester, Southampton or Bournemouth. So that doesn't feel great. I've got a few options here. I could just sell Raya or Gabriel and just use it as an opportunity to free up some funds and move to someone with better fixtures. And then I can maybe go back to double Arsenal defence in the future. Or I potentially just bench Gabriel for some of the upcoming games. Now, I've done this before and it hasn't gone fairly well because he's such a monster in the air. So in all honesty, if I was to lose one of Raya or Gabriel, I think I'd rather lose Raya than Gabriel. But I could, for example, this week, we'll discuss in a second, I've got a bit of a benching headache. I could just sell Gabriel for another cheap defender and just start one of my other ones instead. Or I just sell him to someone like a Gvardiol or a Pedro Porro. So there is the option there. I could even look to try and get back to Trent using 2 transfers. And I could just say, do you know what? I actually think that moving forward, Trent might be the premium that I want to own. Make a downgrade elsewhere, try and move back to Trent in that position. I could even move to a Konate if I wanted to. Like, there are lots of options. But I don't think I want to do that, given that as soon as Saliba is back and from Game Week 12 onwards, I am going to be very happy to have Raya and Gabriel. So at the moment, I'm probably not planning to use a transfer, but there is the possibility to sell one of them to free up the funds and to mean that I don't have to play double Arsenal defence. The rest of the defence, I'm actually okay with at the moment, believe it or not, considering they play for a lot of pretty poor defences. Lewis obviously keeps conceding, City keep conceding, but his minutes continue to be pretty good. And Southampton at home is such a good fixture that if he starts it, and I don't know if he will start it, but if he does, I would definitely want to own him. Beyond that, Bournemouth away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, Liverpool away. These are not fixtures that I necessarily want to own and start Lewis for. So I can imagine that from Game Week 10 onwards, I may either look to sell Lewis or he might not be like an automatic start in my team. But for Game Week 9, unless I find out that he's definitely not starting Southampton, I'll be keeping him. And in all honesty, even if I find out that he's not starting, I'd probably just bench him. I wouldn't sell him, I don't think, for Game Week 9. You could definitely criticise the other 3 defenders I have, which is Ait-Nouri, Davis and Van den Berg, simply because they play for 3 of what is probably the bottom 5 defences in the league. And I think, in particular, Ipswich and Wolves just aren't very good defensively. That being said, I was pretty impressed with Wolves against Man City for large spells of that game. And if you look at the underlying data, considering the opening fixtures they've had, it's not actually that bad. Which is why I have Ait-Nouri in the starting 11 at the moment, because not only do I think he is one of the best, most attacking defenders in the league at the moment, but I also think that Wolves are probably a better defence than both Ipswich and Brentford. So Ait-Nouri is a player which I will continue to argue for, because I think he's so attacking that he's still worth having. And with the fixtures coming up, I'm still delighted I chose him on my wildcard. And I think a lot of people will start to look to him still as the cheap defender to own. I do think he's much better when they play a 5 at the back as opposed to a 4 at the back. And whether they will continue with a 5 at the back, I think it is opposition dependent, and whether they can keep those centre-backs fully fit. But regardless, Ait-Nouri is such a great player, and I'm very, very happy to have him, especially for the next 2 after that against Crystal Palace at home and Southampton at home. I've also got Davis and Van den Berg obviously playing against each other this week. I keep arguing for Davis and saying that he's fantastic, he's got great attacking data, but Ipswich are just so bad defensively. They concede so many goals that even when he gets the assist, and an assist is coming for him, by the way, it's probably going to be like a 4-pointer because he's conceding so many goals that he's losing points for that. And he's also not going to pick up bonus points because of the goals he's conceding too. So there is an issue with him that even with an attacking return, I'm not sure how likely bonus points are. And because he's not got much goal threat, you are just looking at those assist points that you're getting, which is why he's on my bench at the moment, as well as obviously the fact that I've got Mbeumo in my starting 11, and I don't necessarily want that clash if I can help it. People might say, why don't you just start Van den Berg against Ipswich at home? He's probably got the best fixture on paper, but I just don't think Brentford are particularly good. I don't think Van den Berg had a great game in Game Week 8, and I still don't think his minutes are fully secure. He's not got the same level as attacking threat as Ait-Nouri or Davis, so at the moment, for that reason, he's on my bench. But one of the key decisions that I have, and I would love your opinion on this down below, I basically need to start out of Gabriel, Ait-Nouri, Davis, Van den Berg. I need to start 2 and bench 2. So I'd love to know down below. That's the big question of the episode. It's very early, I know, and the decision might be made for me throughout the week. But as of right now, which 2 would you start out of Gabriel, Ait-Nouri, Davis, and Van den Berg? On the midfield, I'm not displeased with it, but this is certainly a position in the team where I could see myself making transfers. I am still happy with the choice to go with both Palmer and Saka on the wildcard in Game Week 7, and I'm very happy with the structure of having 2 premium midfielders. So as of right now, that is the one thing I don't want to change, is to move away from 2 premium midfielders in terms of my structure. So Palmer and Saka, for that reason, are great. Palmer, I'm just happy keeping. Even against Liverpool, he still had chances. He's got Newcastle and Man United in the next 2. Obviously, the Arsenal game is not great in Game Week 11, but then he goes on a really nice fixture run. I've got money tied up in him. Palmer is a player that I don't want to lose. Saka is also a player that I ideally don't want to lose. And by all of the rumours and murmurings that I've heard, it wasn't a serious injury that's kept him out. And he probably will be fine for the Liverpool game. But it's not a great fixture. And also on top of that, there are some other players that have really good fixtures that I could transition to. Heung-min Son looked absolutely excellent in Game Week 8. Phil Foden, I know he didn't start once again, but he's got Southampton at home this week, and it's so incredibly tempting. So there are options to move Saka on, and it will be very, very tempting this week, especially if we don't get a definitive update, especially if we don't start to see him in training pictures very soon. So that is one that I'll approach maybe towards the end of the week, and I will be very, very tempted to move Saka to another player, especially considering I do have 3 free transfers. So even if I use a transfer to sell Saka and then buy Saka back, there is still a world in which I can go into Game Week 12, even with that transfer penciled in, with 4 or 5 free transfers to use. So I'm wondering if that is a position that I decide to get slightly more aggressive with the transfer. There's even the possibility of moving to Bruno Fernandes, which people won't like given the fixtures. So I am wondering about potentially removing Saka. He is a player that, given the slight injury doubts, and given the fact that Arsenal just have injuries, suspensions, they're not quite the same cohesive unit that they were, obviously, at different points, especially last season. So I don't want to knee-jerk too much. I still think Saka's great, and I still think Saka will return in those 3 games, but the possibility is definitely there. Brian Mbeumo's obviously fine this week. He's genuinely a captaincy option if I decided I didn't want to captain Erling Haaland. Ipswich at home is a great game. Rodgers, happy playing this week. After this week, he's got Spurs and Liverpool both away. Not the best fixtures. And then even after that, he's got Chelsea away a couple of weeks after. So I'm not sure if I'm definitely going to keep Rodgers longer term. But remember, from Game Week 12-13 onwards, Villa's fixtures do look pretty good. So anyway, Rodgers is fine to start this week against Bournemouth at home. A decent fixture. I'm glad he returned last week. And I don't mind the idea of keeping him. But there are also some other cheap midfielders that I could look to move to. And then Dibbling on the bench, I can't afford to upgrade him unless I make a downgrade elsewhere. So for now, like, the midfield's okay. I'm not going to sell Palmer, Mbeumo, Rodgers. I'm unlikely to sell Dibbling because I can't afford to go elsewhere, and he'll just sit on my bench most weeks. So it's really, do I decide to sell Bukayo Saka this week? And that will be decided based on the concrete information that we get around his injury, basically. On the forward line, 2 of the players I am happy with for this week, which is Haaland and Cunha. I know Haaland's been really stinky recently. He had 0 shots in Game Week 8. 0 shots, 0 big chances in 3 weeks. Like, he's not playing well, and City aren't finding a way to feed him, but it's Southampton at home. So I am going to give him the armband. I'm going to keep him 1 more week. But from next week, there will be a discussion to be had, especially if I can roll the free transfer. I'll have 4 free transfers going into Game Week 10. I may well decide to transition back to Salah. That is definitely a possibility that I will consider. I could even do like Haaland and Dibbling to Salah and a slightly more expensive forward, giving me 8 better attackers and Salah in my team for what is 3 decent fixtures in 10, 11 and 12 for him. So that is a possibility, but this week is probably not going to be the week that I do it. And Cunha, I'm really happy to have. Now, Brighton did look better defensively in Game Week 8. They've obviously got Van Hecke back. And I don't think this is a perfect fixture for him now, but I just think he's been so brilliant. The only concern was he did come off in the 63rd minute, I think. But I think it was just game state dependent. He was doing a lot of running, and I still think he's brilliant. He looks so good. He created a big chance for Semedo. I still think he's on penalties. And so, yeah, Cunha I'm really, really happy having. Solanke has been frustrating. And he's the one player that I look at right now in this attack, other than Saka, who I could take out if he's injured. Like, in terms of general performance, he's the one player that I am probably most keen to remove. But I also said as early as like last week that I don't mind still having Solanke. So I'm going to keep him for 1 more week. But if he's really disappointing again, going into... I know he's got Ipswich, by the way, in Game Week 12, or Game Week 11, I think that is. Yeah, Game Week 11. I still feel like I could end up selling him next week if he's really disappointing again against Palace. But I'm probably going to give him 1 more week. I guess let's see how Palace get on Monday. I'm recording this on Sunday right now, so I'm yet to see Palace's performance on Monday. But yeah, Solanke's likely to stay for a little bit longer. So that's the way the team looks at the moment. Just to recap, double Arsenal defence a slight issue for me. I need to decide who I want to start this week from of my 5 defenders. I need to bench 2 of them. You could justify starting or benching any of them. The midfield I'm actually okay with at the moment. It's just whether I want to sell Saka. And then Solanke I've got my eye on, but I don't necessarily think I need to sell him this week. So that's the team. 3 free transfers. Let's now take a look at my watch list for Game Week 9 and beyond. So moving on to my watch list for Game Week 9, and I've tried to make it as big as possible because I want to consider all different avenues and angles, but I'll be honest, there are not any players in FPL that I actually desperately want to own. And it's not because I love my team or think my team's great. I would struggle to put together a squad of 15 players that I was actually happy with. I just don't want to own anyone in FPL. Lots of players are just underperforming. There aren't many massive hauls going on, apart from the odd one here and there. And the players that are returning at the moment, they've either got difficult fixtures or I just don't think it's sustainable, which ends up at a point where I'm just like, I don't really want to own many players in FPL. And I'd love to know down below if you agree with me, or maybe again, it's just that I'm struggling to get to grips with who I should be owning at the moment. But let's go through some of the players that I'm potentially looking at. So defensively, my watch list at the moment is Gvardiol, which is a massive knee-jerk based on how good he was against Wolves. But I do just wonder whether longer term, if I still want a City defender, I think Gvardiol's minutes will be better than Lewis in the long term. Pedro Porro is still on the watch list, but Spurs find ways to concede. And I just think after from Game Week 12 and beyond, I don't know that I would necessarily want Porro. So it's a very short-term punt. But I could do something like Gabriel to Gvardiol or Porro. Reece James I've got on there. I think he only played like 53 minutes and he gets injured constantly, but I've got to put Reece James on the watch list. As soon as he becomes available as an option, he has to be on there for me. Lewis Dunk isn't a bad transfer in preparation for Game Week 12 when Brighton's fixtures start to improve. And then I've got Dalot on there just because United have been getting clean sheets this season. And also he's got some attacking threat. He had a massive chance in Game Week 8 against Brentford. So if we just jump over to the official site to look in that in a bit more detail, here are the defenders. Trent obviously is kind of on my watch list, but very difficult to get back to him at the moment. With Liverpool, I just think, it's only Arsenal really is the only fixture I hate, but even Brighton and Villa, I just think, for me, I'm maybe considering Liverpool here, or maybe from this spell onwards, but I still don't know if I'm going to end up going there, because Trent's the one I really want to own, and he's so expensive. Maybe Gabriel to Trent at some point is the move to make. I don't see myself having 2 premium defenders at the moment. So, could go Liverpool. Gvardiol, like I said, the fixtures aren't necessarily there for this spell here. They're not great. But if I do just want to own a Man City defender, could do Gabriel to Gvardiol. That would be a double up against Southampton at home this week, which I quite like. Porro fixtures actually aren't as bad as people are saying from 12, but there's certainly a step down based on what they've had recently and what they have across these 3 here. So I'm not sure that I want to move for Porro. I feel like if I wanted Porro, I should have moved a bit earlier. But there's the temptation. When we start looking at like 4.6 and below, I don't want James Justin. I don't want a Leicester defender particularly. They're even almost as bad as Southampton defensively. Luka Dean's a genuine option, by the way, because Aston Villa have been better defensively than people are giving them credit for. He's got some attacking threat, not as much as we would maybe want, but 0.2 XGI is not terrible. The fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag, but there's an option to go there, but not really interested. Actually, Everton defense is probably one that I need to give more consideration to. By the way, everyone that left a negative comment, and it was my most disliked video ever on YouTube, was the wildcard draft that I showed for Game Week 6, where I had Pickford and Mikalenko double up. I want everyone to apologise, because that, honestly, it was my most disliked video ever. The comments on that video about considering double Everton defence. And my point was, Jared Branthwaite is coming back. Obviously, I don't actually think Branthwaite was available for this game, but with Branthwaite coming back, with the fixtures starting to improve for Everton, they will be a consideration for us. And lo and behold, they now are a consideration. Back-to-back clean sheets, and the fixtures are really there. And so maybe I need to start considering the likes of a Mikalenko, Branthwaite once he's back, Tarkovsky, could even go for a Keane if he continues to start. But yeah, maybe Everton defence is a consideration. Van der Ven's just not got much attacking threat. I'd rather just try and get to you, doggy. Maybe you could go for a Forest defender for the next 3, but beyond that, they really aren't looking great. I mean, Mazraoui could be a shout, I guess, if I want to go cheaper. We've spoken about the fact that Brentford aren't great defensively. I mean, I could just go through and through, but what I'm trying to get at is I don't really want to own any defenders. And so whilst mine might not be perfect at the moment, I'm not sure that's necessarily where I want to use a transfer. So we go back to the watch list. Basically, I don't want to make a defender transfer at the moment, but those are some of the ones that I'm considering. For the midfielders, I've still got the same 2 cheaper options of Adama and Buonanotte. By the way, I shouted out Buonanotte last week, and he goes and gets a return. He actually had the second highest XG of the game week. Unlucky not to come away with more. So he is a serious option if I do want to replace Rodgers for whatever reason. Garnacho has entered the watch list. Whenever Garnacho plays, his data is like really, really good. Like, very, very good. And I do think that now, even if Ten Hag doesn't stay, which I think he probably will, I think Garnacho's got to start for us. He's our best player in attack every single time he plays. So Garnacho, for me, is a seriously good option now that I think his minutes will be slightly better. If we just jump back over and just look at Manchester United's fixtures, we'll just go on to Mazraoui here. They're really nice for the next 5. West Ham, Leicester, Ipswich, and Everton in there. Even the Chelsea at home fixture, it's at least at home. I do wonder if Garnacho might be a really good option. He's at 6.2 million. I just think, I don't know who in my team I would actually take out to bring him in, because Dibbling and Saka are probably the only two I'd look at maybe selling. I'm not going to do Saka to Garnacho, and Dibbling I can only afford to upgrade if I downgrade elsewhere. So whilst Garnacho is on the watch list, I just don't know who I would remove to bring him in. And then it really is Johnson also at that similar price, or Salah and Son. And those are obviously the 2 premiums that I'd probably be looking to if I decide to sell Saka. Foden could be a consideration, but he's just not getting the minutes. He's not in a hot run of form. I know he got the assist, but it was from a corner. Even if he starts against Southampton, he's just not in that run of form where I'd even be that confident that he hauls. So I think it probably would be Heung-min Son, which feels a bit bad because I'm kind of a week behind, right? I've missed that haul now. I've missed the first good fixture. It almost feels like I should have just made that last week if I was going to make the move. I can only get to Salah if I make a downgrade elsewhere. And apart from downgrading Gabriel, which still wouldn't get me there, it would have to be Solanke. So one option is I downgrade Solanke to one of the cheaper forwards, and then I upgrade Saka to Salah. That is a possibility, but this week Salah's got Arsenal, and I've got double Arsenal defence. So again, it doesn't feel like the best week to necessarily do that. So again, I do like some midfielders, but I just don't know who I'm selling in my team. Forwards-wise, like if I do decide that I want to sell Solanke, who's the only forward that I'd sell at the moment, I've got Wood, Wissa, Jackson, and Jimenez. We'll have to see how Wood gets on Monday without Gibbs-White. I do have my concerns around that. And also, his fixtures aren't great long-term. So I feel like I've kind of missed the boat with Wood. Jackson's fixtures over the next couple aren't as good, or the next 3, so maybe I wouldn't look at Jackson right now. So it probably is Jimenez that I'd still be looking at. Fixtures aren't bad for the next few. He's had so many shots in the box. He had the most big chances in Game Week 8 thus far as well. He should take the next penalty, you'd imagine, with Andreas missing his. So Jimenez is a really good option. And then Wissa, with the fixtures that Brentford have coming up, he got 24 minutes, I think it was, off the bench in Game Week 8. Wissa will come back onto the menu very, very soon. So those are the players that I'm considering. But yeah, I don't know, go back to my team. Like, I don't desperately want to move for any of them now due to either fixtures or I can't afford them at the price point they're at. I'm just feeling a bit uninspired by FPL at the moment. And I'd love to know if it is just me, because sometimes it is just a me thing. But if you're also feeling the same, let me know. Like, because I have 8 Nuri and Cunha, who are 2 players going into a nice fixture run, because I've already got Palmer, I feel like those are 3 moves that I might have been considering going for in the upcoming weeks. But now I just look at my team and I'm just like, yeah, maybe I'll just roll again, which is really boring content for you guys. But let me know if there is a move that you think I should make to be super aggressive. I think it is the Saka position. I think that's the only one really that I look at right now that would probably benefit my team and would be a little bit aggressive. And yeah, let me know what your plans are for Game Week 9 as well. So guys, there we have it. Those are my Game Week 9 transfer plans and early thoughts. Hopefully you did enjoy today's video. And if you did, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.